Now it's just gone 1 o'clock here in Sligo, Ireland, and we're on day 9 of Tune at lunch in association with the Hawkswell Theatre here in Sligo. And so yesterday, just to recap, we looked at a tune that was composed by a fiddle player who came from County Mayo called Brendan Tomra. Brendan spent a lot of his life over in Boston, and he came from just outside Newcastle, which is on the border there between Sligo and County Mayo. And Brendan's written many great tunes. So we are going to stay in that general area. There's a huge amount of crossover between Mayo and Sligo and Roscommon and Leitrim. Obviously, you can look at the music of this area in a more regional way, and a lot of people use the term North Connacht to describe the musical style of this area, because, as you know, music does not stop at county lines or things like that. So there was a radius in which people travelled in the past, and that took in parts of County Mayo for Sligo musicians, and Roscommon and Leitrim. So we have a lot in common, of course. So today I'm going to play a tune that was played by two of the musicians who are very, very famous in this area, and indeed well outside this area, but they spent much of their lives playing music in this area, and for that alone it's a very important thing. So many great musicians emigrated from Sligo and other places, and their music unfortunately was more often than not only to be enjoyed after that on 78 discs and obviously LPs and CDs and all that after that. But thankfully there were still fantastic musicians that stayed and played music. And as I mentioned, I'm going to talk about two of the greats nowadays. Two of the greats from this area. Unfortunately, they're no longer with us, but they are Fred Finn, who is a fantastic fiddle player, and Peter Horan, an amazing flute player. And you cannot talk about the music of Sligo without mentioning Fred and Peter. They played as a duet for much of their lives, and in a way, with the duet, they brought together those two biggest elements of Sligo music, the flute playing and the fiddle playing, and they brought that together in their duet playing, and became, I suppose, the face or ambassadors for the music from this area for many, many decades. Fred Finn passed away in 1986, I believe, but so I never unfortunately got to meet Fred Finn, but Peter Horan was a very, very active musician right up until just a number of years ago. So his presence is still felt really in Sligo. Now, going back to the tune for today is a reel that was known in this area and by Fred and Peter as Michael Riley's. Now, the name of the tune actually, it was composed by a great fiddle player called Seán Ryan, and he called it Twilight at Portroe. Now, Seán Ryan was a beautiful fiddle player from County Tipperary, settled in Laois for a lot of his life, but he was a gorgeous fiddler. If you go to YouTube, you'll find some very nice clips of Seán Ryan playing. He had a beautiful bow style on the fiddle, and he was a relation of Paddy O'Brien, the very famous accordion player from Tipperary. Seán Ryan himself was born in Nina and wrote a lot of tunes which are still very a big part of the tradition today, and some of them made their way into the repertoire of Sligo musicians such as Fred Finn and Peter Horan. And as I mentioned before, they called this tune, and the title became quite well known in the Sligo area, as Michael Riley's. Now, Michael Riley was a renowned fiddle player from Leitrim. I think he came from a small little place called Drumreilly in Leitrim, very close to the Cavan border, and then lived in Longford. So he'd be known as a Leitrim Longford fiddler. And he lived up until the mid-60s, died a very, very young man, but he seems to have been a remarkable fiddle player. and must have had contact with Fred, Finn and Peter Horan, and that's where they got the tune name. And if anybody's interested in hearing some of the fiddling of Michael Riley, you can actually go to the website of the Traditional Music Archive, itma.ie, and put a search in for Michael Riley, and they have a couple of very, very nice tracks of him. And in fact, one of the tracks that they have on the Traditional Music Archive website of Michael Riley playing is a recording of a hornpipe that was composed by Seán Ryan. So obviously the music of Seán Ryan definitely seems to have made its way into Michael Riley's repertoire, and then he was very well known around the region here, and maybe he passed along the tune to Fred and Peter, and that's how it got its name. But as I mentioned, the real name of the tune is Twilight at Portroe. So I'm going to play it now. It starts down on low G, so it was always, I suppose, from a fiddling perspective, when I used to listen to the recordings of Fred and Peter, it was one of the tunes that always stuck out to me, because it's lovely to hear the tone of the low notes down there starting on low G. That was Twilight at Portroe, a reel that was composed by a great Tipperary Laois fiddler called Seán Ryan. And I first heard the tune from the great Sligo duet of Fred Finn, the fiddle player, and Peter Horan, flute player. And they called the tune Michael Riley's, and that name kind of stuck around the Sligo area here. Great to see Betty Dowling tuning in again, and from Atlanta, and Dara Morley from Mayo. Fergal McGowan, that's great, listening in from Enfield. Had many lovely tunes with Peter. What a gentleman. Well, that is for sure, Fergal. I don't think you'd ever find somebody that wouldn't say that about Peter. He was just a great character and such a big part of the music here, and everybody knew about him. He seemed to turn up everywhere and would always play music from morning, noon and night. What unbelievable stamina, even in his later years. Just incredible. He would put any young person to shame. Tons of Portroe people, this is from Peter Patton, tons of Portroe people emigrated to my town in Vermont. Isn't that amazing? Portroe's in Tipperary. A lot of them emigrated to Vermont. Beautiful parts of the world. Well, thanks for that, Peter. That's very interesting. And Mike, good evening from down under. Yes, of course it's not lunchtime in Australia, and it reminds me to mention again that this evening I've been playing on my own here now for the last while, and I'm getting lonely. And this evening, my wife Samantha Harvey, who is a great piano player and a dancer, and she's with me here, but she will be playing and joining me for a 30-minute live Facebook Live concert that's part of the Ireland Performance series that's being put together by Culture Ireland, and that's happening today in just a few hours at 6:30 Irish time. And when I saw the mention there about dinner time in Australia, it made me think of I saw somebody in Japan posting my message about the concert that Samantha and myself are doing, and it's 2 a.m. or 2:30 in the morning in Japan time. So I don't know, anybody that will be tuning in from Japan will be very, very brave souls, getting up early or staying up late. But we'd love to see you all tuning in this evening, and keep sending the messages. It's great. It makes it very interesting to see where you're tuning in from. Slate Quarries, says Peter, and that's a follow up to Peter's comment about Portroe people going to Vermont. Okay, so slate quarrying, beautiful. Well, we have lots of great Liscannor slate in County Clare in Ireland. So maybe you must have some good slate over there in Vermont. It is a lovely stone for sure. And thanks for tuning in. Well, before we finish, I'm going to play this tune again, starting off nice and slowly. And I was thinking while I was playing the tune there, it's a lovely tune on the fiddle for sure, and just thinking back in my head of how Fred Finn used to play it. It's the way he would cross those strings with the bow, because obviously when you start on the low G string on the fiddle, you have a bit of ground to cover, going across to the other strings, and he brought the bow across in such a seamless, kind of relaxed way, without bringing out every individual note, but kind of sliding and slurring between those notes. It gives a lovely feel, relaxed feel to the tune. So if you're giving it a go on the fiddle, you might try to get some of that flavour to it, and I hope you enjoy it. And as always, if anybody thinks of any tune that they'd like to hear or maybe like to learn, do let us know, because I love seeing the suggestions and the messages coming from all of you. So thanks again to the Hawkswell for organising this, and it'll be no fun without you all tuning in every day, and I appreciate it very much. And until later on this evening, this is Teresa O'Grady, a mighty banjo player, living not too far away from me here. How's it going, Teresa? Long time no see, but it's good to see you popping on here. You had a lovely couple of tunes up on Facebook there a few weeks back, and as I'm always saying, it's been great to see so many people putting up wonderful tunes. I was listening to Seán Montgomery, a fantastic fiddle player from Dublin, who we don't often get treated to hearing, and it was lovely to see Seán putting up a couple of Seán Ryan tunes, actually, now that I think of, which is the same composer as wrote the tune that we're looking at today. So we'll finish off again with Michael Riley's, or more accurately known as Twilight at Portroe. I see mentioned there the Nightingale coming up. That's right, that's another Seán Ryan, a beautiful jig that he wrote. So we'll finish off. Well, James McCaffrey, how's it going? Good. Thanks for joining in, and I'm going to finish off today now by playing Michael Riley's, or the Twilight at Portroe by Seán Ryan, the great Tipperary fiddle player. Thanks a million, everybody, and hope to see you at 6:30 today Irish time, where, as I said, Samantha Harvey, my wife, will be joining me on the piano and dance. Thanks a million.